Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Toby Eunice with AGK Media, and I'd like to welcome you to our Wednesday night panel. Tonight's topic is the 2019 Mysterious Writing, Jenny Kile's questions, and Forrest Fenn answers. We have a distinguished panel tonight, so stay tuned. And again, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight, joining us tonight. Before we get started, I've got a couple of announcements that I want to make. The first is that if you're going to ask a question in the chat room, precede it with an @ AGK-media, so Shelley can pick it out and when she'll get a chance to ask your questions on your behalf of the panel session. If you choose not to do that, you can send a text message to our toll-free number at 866 597-9901, and that will pop up right here in front of me. So that's another option if you have questions for the panel. We plan to go 1 hour tonight, so it's going to pop by really quickly. Means everybody has to pay attention, especially our panelists. So let's go around the room, starting with Cynthia, and have our panelists introduce themselves and and have them tell you where they can be found on the internet. Cynthia?
My name is Cynthia Meacham. I have a website. It's chasingfennstreasure.com. No spaces, no apostrophe.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I'm Jono Jones from the UK, and I go by Brit Chaser on YouTube and Hint of Riches.
And we have an interesting panel tonight in that two of our members are offshore, if you will, one in the UK and one in Japan. Shelley Carney?
Hi, I'm Shelley Carney with The Softer Side, and you can find Toby and I tomorrow live at 1 o'clock on The Softer Side and multi-streaming to AGK Media.
What's our topic tomorrow, or is it a surprise?
Our topic tomorrow is powerful connections.
Sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I look forward to being there. And Matt?
I don't think I'm going to have to check out that Powerful Connections. Sounds pretty good. I'm Matt Brewer, and you can find me at brewerariel.com. That's BREWER Ariel, AERIAL.com.
Matt is one of our favorite drone pilots. By the way, have you put up a YouTube channel? Yeah, you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I have one out there. I've just started populating with some of my adventures.
Well, he just put up a video. Is that where the video of you flying around in that paraglider is?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, if you get a chance, go to Matt's YouTube channel. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's called My Vicarious Adventures.
Right, go to it. And Matt has recently learned how to fly a paraglider, which is basically a person hanging from a parachute with a motor that looks like it's attached to his back. Matt said it wasn't necessarily. And the takeoff basically is a short run into the wind, and then the motor takes over, and it looks like an amazing way to fly.
It's a lot of fun. It really is.
It looks it. So go check out his videos. And last but not least, Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Houle, and I've just recently started a YouTube channel, Forrest Fenn Learning Curve.
And what I would call some very thoughtful videos, and of course we would have expected Michael to produce those. So here's what we want to do tonight. Every year, well, not every year, but I guess since 2012, 2011, Jenny Kile, who hosts Mysterious Writings as both a blog site and she also has a YouTube channel. Make sure you log into her YouTube channel, and if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. But every year she would send out Fenn a set of 6 questions, and he would answer them. Now, one of the traits of Jenny Kile's 6 questions is that she managed to pack a lot more into the 6 questions. So every question had every one of the 6 actually had kind of multiple numbers of questions embedded in it. So it always made it interesting because I always felt it gave Fenn the opportunity to choose which of the questions he was going to answer. She's done that every year, and there were a couple of, and she did it again this year. She's always released them on February 4th. Again, they were released on February 4th at her blog site. And the questions this year had a couple of surprises. Now, what's happened in the past, for those of you that are new to the search, is those of us who had been in the search for any length of time would take a look at the questions and answers, and we would start interpreting them to see if Forrest had actually given us an additional hint or an additional clue, and a lot of things came out of that. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to ask the panelists to share their thoughts on each of the 6 questions, but we're going to start with kind of an open-ended question, and Cynthia, we'll start with you and go around the horn. Which of this year's 6 questions did you feel was the most impactful, and why? Cynthia?
For me, I'm going to be like probably hundreds of other people who are boots on the ground who actually read all these questions. And for myself, it's going to be question number 3, because that is the one that's closest to where I feel Forrest is talking directly to me. And now everyone should laugh at this because I'm sure there's hundreds or thousands of other people that feel the same way. But in his, I have this in front of me. He said, I have not been back to the treasure chest since I hit it more than 8 years ago. Perhaps the artifacts are enjoying each other's company as they patiently listen for the clomp of a boot. Now, should I go more? Or just stop there with that being my
we
favorite?
asked you to tell us why you thought this was a significant question.
Well, okay, so I actually felt like he actually could be talking to me in this, as I'm sure thousands of others think that. One of the good things that Sasha brought up last night on her show was that almost sounds, the fact that he said clomp of a boot, a single boot, not boots, it almost sounds like that is the last step you take to that treasure, that last step. So you have 8 clues right, and you got that one last clue, which could not be seen on Google Earth. And I hope
He's talking
myself
about you.
or someone else is close.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all struggle. I know we struggled with last year's the gut feeling because when he made that gut feeling statement, I think it was the same for all of us. He's talking about me, right?
Right.
Jono, which one of the questions was most significant to you and why?
So if it's to me, it's 6 in the picture, but I can't go into that. So I'm going to pick what I think is most impactful to everyone. So I think the answer around which map we need to be looking at, the road map, and how we use the road map. One of the things that I'm quite set in my current solve, but one of the things I keep doing is trying to disprove it, because obviously making the trip over there is costly. So I want to try and talk myself out of it and then look for something else before I come. And with that, I think the original quotes from Forrest around it draws a map for you didn't sit very well with me. So I was thinking, take it in the canyon down. Why, do you turn that into a spot? And that never sat well. With this, to me, it is completely different, and it's using a roadmap and how would you give directions on that? So it's quite possible to have spots and instructions. So from this spot, you go down this lane, then you get to this spot, and then so I think not each clue needs to be in its exact spot as a result. So that's been really helpful.
How did you feel about his use of the phrase roadmap? To the best of my knowledge, he's never used that phrase before to describe it.
Yeah,
he's always used the more generic maps or good maps or old maps, whatever. I had never heard the use of the phrase roadmap. What did you think about that?
Yeah, so I think with a lot of these questions, he's sort of really sort of reining it in from some of the out there theories, I guess. So it's really sort of focusing people to give it the best chance. And I think with this one, I've heard a lot of solves. I've heard a lot of people use things like aviation maps and which different types of maps. And this really just says no. It's the maps I'm talking about, the roadmap, and how you use it. So that really should narrow it down for a lot of people.
Michael, I'm sorry, Matt. So to you, what was the most significant of the 6 questions and answers, and why?
I think I liked the first question the best, and it's specifically around his answer, where he says that the only changes to that site today are those that nature has made. So what that says to me is there's some noticeable change, maybe a rock slide or some other force of nature that has occurred at that site. And, of course, with Google Earth and so forth, we can go back in time and look at an image. So if you have a spot where you're thinking, maybe you take that Google Earth and you roll it back a couple of years and see if anything in the terrain, anything has changed like that. And maybe it helps hone in or eliminate a potential spot. You think it's there, but you roll it back 5 years and there's absolutely no change to it that you can see. Probably not it.
Nice one. We're going to talk more about that. As a matter of fact, we're going to address the issue of the concept of Google Earth, other satellite imaging companies that have that can provide you for a fee higher resolution photos, and the difference between what you see on Google Earth and what you'd see in the same location with either a drone or boots on the ground. We're going to talk a little bit about that on Friday night at the Fandango. Michael, which one and why?
Well, you first asked which question had the most impact. And if it's impact with me, I have to say none of them. There's nothing in any of them that causes me to alter the details of my solve or my solution strategies in any way. However, that doesn't mean that I think that none of the answers have any significance. It's just that as it relates to what I'm doing, it doesn't affect. So probably in that regard, none of the answers stands out more than any others, except for the sixth one. I think the most significant one is that this time when Forrest says that he's planning to drastically curtail or scale back his social engagements or his interactions with
social
characters,
activities. Yeah.
I really think he means it this time.
Mm-hmm. So what makes you think he means it this time?
I think he means it this time because maybe it's just because of the perspective that I've gotten in the last 2 years to see that that I think with respect to what he's saying and how he's engaging, I see a lot of spinning of wheels. I think from his perspective, I don't think there's been much in the way of progress at least in the open community. And it's just, the same sorts of questions, the same sorts of hints, the same sorts of topics all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think there must be a fatigue level in that.
I think I agree with you. I'm not sure I'm as convinced that he'll step that far away. But we can talk about that later. So I do want to ask those of you in the chat room if you'll do us the favor, and I'm assuming that you're here because you would like to hear more of these folks' thoughts on these matters, but that also means it is very likely that you've read the questions and that you've formulated your own ideas on them. So what I'd like you to do in the chat room is make a quick comment of which one for you was the most significant, and then a short addition of why you think it was so significant. Now, of course, you don't have to do this. Jono, I felt like Jono didn't want to give away some of what he was thinking about, and the same applies to you. But it would be interesting if you all in the chat room would share your thoughts on which of the 6 questions you felt was significant, and let us know why. And remember, if you have a question for any member of the panel, make sure you start your question with an @AGK-media, so Shelley can pick up on it, and that way we can make sure that question gets answered. I haven't seen any yet. And then also, if you wanted to pop up in front of me on my phone here, you can text your message or your question to toll-free 866-597-9901. Okay, let's go on, and I'm going to reverse the process. And I want to start with question 1, and I'm just going to read the question. I'm not going to read the answer because you should have done that already, because I thought that Jenny's questions, perhaps because whether she knew this was the last set of questions she'd be asking Forrest, I thought they were very insightful. And I thought it looks to me like she thought, not that she never doesn't do this, but it looked to me like she thought long and hard about exactly which question she wanted to ask. So I want to read the question, and then Michael, I want you to talk a little bit about your sense of Fenn's answer, and I know you already said that it hasn't significantly changed the approach that you're going to take to your solution, but I'd like to hear what you think of the answer. We're going to go around the horn in the same way. Jenny asks, Forrest, it's been over 8 years since you hid the treasure chest to silently wait for the finder. Have you ever been tempted to zoom in on Google Earth to see if the chest is visible or still there? What do you think you would see? And I think the implication of this question is that there's some sense that Google Earth provides us the kind of resolution necessary to outline a 10-inch by 10-inch object. I'm not sure that's necessarily true. Michael?
Okay, well, I've used Google Earth often, and I've looked at all sorts of things, anything that I could, with respect to the whole general area that I'm interested in. And I know that there's no way that it can help me find a little box. So he says that he zoomed in several times, but he wasn't looking for the treasure because he can't see it in Google Earth. You've got to believe him on this. Even if it was sitting in the open, I doubt very much you'd be able to see anything at all. So what would people want to find out by using Google Earth this way? Number one, sentiment, nostalgia, just, I've zoomed into the town where I've grown up, and looked to see what has happened to the buildings there. I mean, there could be just that reason alone is enough. But I think there have been some developments that may cause some concern. For instance, you might be concerned about mudslides, landslides. They happen all the time. Forest fires. They don't necessarily affect the treasure chest directly, but they could affect the layout around the treasure chest to the point where clues that he has left, either in the poem or in the book could be altered or obscured as a result. So every year when Google Earth gets updated, of course it's natural to want to see whether or not the vicinity of the treasure is still as it was when he set out clues that would describe how to get there.
Matt, that first question.
Yeah, so I didn't see that as anything new. I expected him to answer that way because of his Moby Dickens answer that was very similar to this question. And I believe what he said is, he says there's not a picture of the treasure chest on Google Earth. And then he follows that up with, because Google Earth doesn't go down far enough.
Right.
So that was kind of the expected answer. When I read the question, he's just going to say, you can't see it on Google Earth. And I've already said what I thought was the meaningful part to that question was, that there is some change due to some natural forces in the area of the treasure. So maybe that's something you can use.
Jonah?
I think one day Google Earth will go down far enough, and I think Fenn's aware of that. And because of that, I think what he's saying here, like with a few of the other answers, he's just clarifying things. It's either buried, covered by something, or out of sight because it's in a rock crevice or something. But to me, that's just saying you won't see it. It's not just sat there out in the open. It's likely to be covered or buried.
Cynthia?
I didn't get too much from this because Google Earth is only updated like every couple years or whatever. And after reading this, I actually went in to look at the Google Earth at my site. And the last update for my site was 2015. But one of the cool things that I also then went back to like 2006 on my same site, my same spot. And the good thing was one of my geographic features I need to be there as one of my clues was actually there back in 2006 and maybe back further too. I didn't go back further. So the only thing that I wondered is obviously he knew he couldn't see the treasure there. So why did he actually go there and look? What was he looking for? But I agree pretty much with what the guys said that you can check the landscaping and mudslides, fires, whatever.
So let me add my 2 cents to that because it's an area that I feel comfortable in discussing. Everyone's right that at the moment, Google Earth doesn't resolve enough for you to distinguish a 12 or 10 by 10 object from a big boulder, basically. And as a result, you end up looking at Google Earth from a grandiose perspective in the same way that you might look at a road map to give you directions. We, of course, discovered, and we'll talk about on Friday night, the difference between what Google Earth provides versus what you can get out of a drone flying at 100 feet versus when you get boots on the ground. And one of our conclusions was that unless you take a lot of time flying that drone at 100 feet over a site that's relatively precise, you're still going to miss it, simply because it could even be camouflaged. Now, I do want you, if you look up keyhole satellites have been flown by the intelligence community for decades now. And keyhole satellites are the ones that we use to take a look, to spy on our friends and enemies, actually. And keyhole satellite has enough camera capability in the most recent models to resolve a silver dollar from 200 miles up. And so some of those images are, if they don't have intelligence value, they are sold to government contractors who use them for other purposes that may deal with things like agriculture or mining or oil and gas, et cetera, et cetera. You can purchase those. There are also companies that fly their own satellites that have more resolution than the imagery that Google uses for its mapping purposes. So, well, if you can find those companies that provide that physical mapping service, their imagery is far more resolved than what you'll find on Google Earth, and they can make it available to you. They are not cheap. The images that they sell you cost a lot, and the other thing is they may not have they don't have images of the entire Earth in the same way that Google Earth does. So they may not have images associated with your search site. So, but you should be aware of that. So I think those are all good. What struck me was that he has the same limitations as us when it comes to using Google Earth to look for the treasure, and that means it is very unlikely that Google Earth can help him resolve whether or not the treasure has been found. Right? He still has to rely on some sort of more traditional contact, the searcher contacting him via email or phone call or whatever, letting him know that the treasure has been found. So it's not, I've heard some conversation over the past couple of days about, well, maybe that's how that's how he plans to determine whether or not the treasure's been recovered. I think it's far more simple than that. And I think it goes back to Moby Dickens, where he first asked that the finder return the infamous turquoise bracelet. And I think it's more him determining whether or not the treasure has been found is far more what's the word that I'm looking for? Far more physical. It's not just the etherealness of looking on Google Earth or looking at high resolution photos. So let's go on to question number 2. I'll read the question, and then I'd like your guys' opinions on it. Jenny asked, and this is one of those in which he squeezes in more than one question. Are you ever fearful your special spot has lost its charm? Could it? In A Thrill of the Chase, you mentioned how some of your most memorable spots have seen strangers cast their own hooks into them. Could strangers do that to the place where the chest rests? Or do you feel your special spot will always be secure in its solitude? And this is where he uses that strange word, which I've only heard him use twice before. I am almost umbilically attached to this spot. Cynthia, let's start with you. What was your sense of his response?
Nothing really new there. I think he used that word, meaning he's almost inseparable from it. That gives me a sense that it's sentimental to him. He has some kind of an emotional tie. But in the past, he's used the words dear, fond of, and of course, his special place. So the only slight thing I sort of thought about was if it had to do anything with his young boyhood, and when I think from the ages of 2 to 6 or 7 is when his family actually camped at Fishing Bridge in Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
but I've searched it. It ain't there.
Yeah. So what did you think of the area when you went to Fishing Bridge? I know you went up there last summer. How did you feel about the place? Did you feel some sort of, not necessarily umbilical, but some sort of connection to the area? Did you feel like it had that level of importance, or was there the difference of, you know, a much larger population in Yellowstone right now? How did you feel about that?
I actually felt a real sense of Fenn when I was at Fishing Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a large parking lot there that you can park, and I was there when it wasn't real crowded.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually went out partway across the bridge, and I actually sat on one of the benches looking out at Yellowstone Lake or the other direction. And I mean, I felt such a sense of Fenn's presence.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's any more significant than maybe like if I was at Slough Creek or a place like that where I knew that he went, and Slough Creek was a place he had gone with his dad. So that was the second place that I felt like there was really a connection of Forrest being there.
Jono, question 2.
So through all the answers, I think the 3 levels he answers things. So one's a very sincere, he's slowing down with this and stepping back, and I genuinely believe that. I think the next level is like with use the road map, he's clearing things up. It doesn't take much to think this is what he's instructing us. And then I think he's still sneaking in some hard to spot hints, and from the hints I think I've got from the scrapbooks, there's a style I think he's got, and the use of umbilically attached here, my spidey sense went off. I haven't worked it out, but I'm convinced there's a hint in there.
There's something there, huh?
I think so.
And can you share that with us?
I'm racking my brains.
And
I
Matt,
haven't got it yet.
what do you think, Matt?
I too believe that there's some sort of an obscure hint in that word umbilically attached. Well, umbilically anyway. I started thinking about, well, what could that mean, and how could that be a hint? So when I think of umbilically attached, so the place has some sort of a motherly nurturing effect for him. So maybe it's some place that he went to and he thinks of it as a place that helps him to heal. Maybe that could be it. The other thing, umbilical cord gives you it's your life source. It's everything to you, and it could be just that simple. It's who he is, and he's attached to it because that's his religion. He talks about, he finds his religion, his church is in the creek bottoms, and so forth and so on. So I think maybe if you're thinking New Mexico, maybe it's a place that he went to heal when he had cancer, and he thinks of it as, life-giving or a healing, nurturing place.
You certainly get a sense that he derives some form of energy from the outdoors, from nature. And so I agree with your sensibility on that. Michael, what do you think?
Well, I think in this answer, he graciously avoided the question to some extent.
Not unusual, right?
Yeah. He did it, of course, the nicest way. He can't really say the obvious, which is that if the treasure is found, it will, of course, affect the treasure. When Jenny said, could strangers do that to the place the chest rests, or do you feel your special spot will always be secure in solitude? Well, the answer is no. He's made it vulnerable by making it the subject of a treasure quest. But I thought it was a nice answer. As far as the word umbilical goes, mid-air refueling, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. Which I don't know. He wouldn't necessarily have done that.
Not necessarily, but
right during his tour in Vietnam. But there were other stations that he was assigned to, especially the ones in Europe, that even during training would have required an umbilical connection to refueling aircraft. So the only thing that I noticed about this particular response was that there was a slight distinction between his response in the previous question, question 1, he ends that the response by saying the only changes today to that site today are those that nature has made. And it was difficult for me to interpret that, whether that was the result of him looking on Google Earth or just an ecological environmental decision or assumption. Like it is true that if you go to a spot in 2010 and return to that spot in 2019, you will see those environmental changes. So I couldn't tell, but what I thought was interesting is that he says that, and it kind of cemented what he meant in the first response. The only changes to that site today are those that nature made. And then in this, he says the immediate landscape will probably remain about the same for as long as time has to go. The implication to me was that in a grander scale, that the special spot, because we've always thought of the special spot as something much bigger than a precise location, that the chest resides in a location that may not be affected by that particular environment. So there might be trees and changes in the courses of rivers, et cetera, in the general area, but that because of where the treasure is placed, it's not that environmental and ecological impact is going to be lessened. Let's go on to question 3. There are so many truly unique artifacts placed in the treasure chest. Each holds a beautiful story that keeps getting longer. As these treasures continue to endure the passing of time, what do you imagine they are experiencing? Do you feel the conditions have been harsh or kind? And there's a sense that an attempt to anthropomorphize each of the items in the treasure chest. Michael, what do you think?
Well, he says he hasn't been back to the treasure chest. He's in 8 years. That's consistent with everything he's ever said about that.
Yeah.
Patiently listen for the clomp of a boot is very evocative. It makes me really think, well, no differently than before, but still, it really does support the idea of being underground. Okay, if you're above ground, you don't listen, you look. That's the image that comes to mind. When you are underground, your senses are limited, you listen and you hear it as a clomp. It really is a nice piece of writing, I think, but it does suggest underground, not buried, not hidden, not necessarily obscured in some way, but literally underground.
Wow. Well,
I won't say buried, and I won't say not buried. Underground.
I was just about to ping you on that, because you and I have had hours worth of discussion on this matter of buried, hidden, or what was it that you called it in that one post you made? It was a nice turn of phrase.
Cunningly hidden.
Cunningly hidden. Yeah, that was.
It allows me wiggle room to escape if somebody tries to pin me down.
So does the clump of a boot fit in with your description of cunningly hidden?
Of course.
Okay, all right. Matt, what do you think?
I think pretty much everybody said everything so far that I was thinking along these lines too. I mean, the clomp of the boot just reaffirms that, it's somewhere off, that you're going to have to hike to it. It's going to be fairly remote. I don't know if necessarily that the clomp of the boot means it's underground, but possibly. I mean, you could hear the clomp of the boot whether you're on top of the ground or under the ground. I don't necessarily. I don't know how you could be within, what do you say, 25 foot. If it's underground or buried, I don't know how you could be 25 foot from it. He says I don't know how anybody could be within 25 foot and not see it.
I think it was 12 feet that he.
12 feet or 25 foot. If it was buried, I could stand right on top of it and not know it was there.
Right.
Right. So I don't think it's buried, but it may be in a recess or a concave. You use concave several times, but I don't see anything particularly new there.
Well, and I'll go around and ask this question after we finish this round. So, Jono, question 3, what did you think?
I got a few things. So a bit of bias with my soul. So I'm expecting to actually go up a dry creek and either see a log petrified log, or something with engraved writing on top of a chest that's in a hole with no dirt over it, just one of those objects. So I agree with Michael on it being underground in that sense. I also took from this that anyone who's thinking there's a proxy item, he's clarifying there's a treasure chest there again. I know he said it before, but he's really clarifying that. And the only other thing is he specifically says he's not been back to the treasure chest. He doesn't say the special
place.
He could easily have said that. So I wonder whether that's left in room that he has been back to the special place since, but not necessarily removed the item to look at the chest again.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe a different way to ask it is, do you think that since he put it in place, he has actually touched the chest or its contents?
I think from that, if we take it at face value, he hasn't touched the chest, but he may well have been back. I mean, I'm a big fan. I was thinking about the umbilically attached thing again, and I'm quite a fan that it's actually he's got cameras, because I think, you know, when he says it's not very close to a human-made trail, why use very close? So I think actually it's not that far from a place where he could have cameras with electricity. So that
Helping
could be
it.
that. Yeah, I think he does have cameras pointing at the area, but I think he may have been back to the spot.
Well, if I recall correctly, that was always one of his favorite teases for potential searchers, where he'd ask them if they had ever seen the web camera that was placed near Old Faithful, and of course that's where people like writers would end up going all the way to Yellowstone because they had a clue. And I think you talked about this before, Cynthia. What do you think on this response to question 3?
I think he's telling me or whoever to be patient before you go boots on the ground. You can't hurry it before the snow's gone, and or not. I don't know.
So for your upcoming season, are you planning to go back up before the snow is melted?
I can hardly stand it, so I will probably start going in April to my area and measuring the snow depth, driving as far as I can, and then walking as close as I can without being in danger. I don't want to do anything stupid, but just to see how deep the snow is. So yeah, I'll probably start going in April, but not really going to the area until it's safe.
Right.
I don't want to be a statistic.
So, again, this is one of those examples in which Jenny manages to sneak in a couple of questions. The last one, do you feel the conditions have been harsh or kind? And he doesn't choose to answer that one. Right. So sometimes a lot can be explained or can be interpreted in a way of what he doesn't do, because if you go back through each of her questions where each question may have multiple sub-questions within it, it's always interesting to me to analyze the question he doesn't answer as much as the question he does answer. Let's go on to question 4. Shelley, let me check with you. Do we have any questions from the room?
We have some comments that I found very interesting.
Go ahead.
I'd like to share with everybody.
Yeah.
So let me just go over them quickly. Since they're not questions, you won't need to answer them, but you might want to comment on them when I'm finished.
Okay.
From Matt Bear, he says, I don't see that any question is significant, but I enjoy hearing how everyone believes Fenn is speaking to that person. Robert Zielinski says, umbilical and clump of the boot. Umbilical equals pre-Vietnam part of his life. Clump of a boot equals someone has solved the first 8 clues. Richard Holmberg says the 200-foot flight over the chest was the searcher who didn't know they were close. They were in a plane.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that 200-foot notion.
Sometimes Yaget. No, sorry. Sometimes Ya. Gut feeling. Umbilical equals bellyache, Colorado. painfully obvious.
Good. I like it. Well, some interesting comments. Room, thank you very much for those comments. But again, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panel in general or any one of the panelists individually, make sure you precede your question with an @ AGK-media so it pops up on Shelley's screen, and or you can send it, and I noticed someone has, you can text a question to our toll-free number at 866-597-9901. We're not going to open the phone lines today because we've got just too much to get done. All right, question 4. Many searchers feel they are battling minds with you. And again, this is Jenny asking Forrest. Many searchers feel they are battling minds with you as if they are playing chess game to win the chest. Do you see your treasure hunt as a competition between you and us, or do you feel that it is your job in writing the poem was actually able... let me read that. Do you see your treasure hunt as a competition between you and us, or do you feel that your job in writing the poem was actually as an ally to help us find your treasure? What do you think? Why do you think no one has been able to say checkmate, Forrest Fenn? Check and mate, Forrest Fenn. Cynthia, let's go back and start with you.
Regarding his answers to this?
Yeah, several dozen hunters have already claimed, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So that is exactly what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
When he's saying that, I like the last sentence of his answer where he said, in his mind, studying the clues is tantamount to using a road map to get from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
So basically he's saying you use the clues just like to get from one clue to another, just like you'd use a road map if you were driving to get from one place to the next place you turn. I think over almost all 6 years I've been searching, I've thought of it that way. I love maps and road maps way more than Google Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I am really a map person, and I all along thought that when I use a road map to go to a place I'm not familiar with, which is definitely Montana and Wyoming, you go to a certain turn, and at that clue, you change direction or whatever. And I don't know. I think Fenn's saying it's straightforward, and that's the way that you need to do it.
So you and we have had conversations over the years about the distance, the size of the problem, the distance between clues 1 and 9. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you, like us, have come to the conclusion, or over time, the distance between clue 1 and clue 9 for you has shrunk down to a much smaller thing. For us, we say under 1,000 feet. Did the use of the phrase roadmap change your distance between clue 1 and clue 9?
No, I still think that they're fairly close together, but if I would have a solution to where there is more distance, I would still then go with the more distance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just don't know.
Right.
So for me, I just like it that from one clue to another, like a road map, it's where you change your direction.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you have to change 90 degrees or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a change.
Mm-hmm.
So
all right,
that's me.
Jonathan, I know you have a different opinion on this matter.
Me doubting myself. One of the big things was the how a map would work.
Mm-hmm.
So is it directions and locations,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the one thing playing on my mind, and this really eased that, as I say. My only thing, I guess, with this is in my solve, Homer Brown. Beyond that, it turns into something slightly different. That isn't about because you're at such a small scale. There aren't names of things,
Mm-hmm.
so there needs to be something else that homes you in. So there's that. My concern, I guess, is it helps people because some people are looking at aviation maps to say this to me says no, that isn't that. So get another solve. My only concern is if it leads people down a route that it's about road names or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my only thing I'd say about that, I guess, is Forrest has been really clear that you have to have the first clue solved and then do it in order. You can't just jump in halfway. If it was about road names, there's a chance that that sounds like that's the Blaze, or that sounds like that's Homer Brown. It probably isn't that because he's very bold in saying that. The other thing I think with this is where he says the poem was written to assist all searchers. I think the further away you go from the poem, the more Forrest playing tricks with us. And there's that smoke screen and that just natural chance for rabbit holes to be gone down. I think what he's saying here is stay close to the poem.
Right.
The next step is TTOTC, and then beyond that, be careful. So the poem's the truth. The rest, he's not promising that he hasn't sent you down rabbit holes purposely when you deviate from being that close to the poem. So I think he's reiterating that as well. But this is really big for me because I can relax about every single clue being in the exact point, its directions and points. Yeah.
So what is your distance between clue 1 and 9?
I mean, there's a drive, and I think it's about 2.4 miles, and then it's not that far after that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Matt?
Well, I did find it interesting that he commented about all of the video makers and bloggers who have presenting entertaining evidence to the contrary of being mistaken. So
shout out to AGK.
Yeah. So he is watching apparently. So he kind of gave us the impression that he's really taking a step back and not really watching or seeing what people are doing or talking about. But that sure sounds like he is to some degree. It reaffirms that the key to this is studying the clues, understanding what the clues are in the poem, and trying to marry at least the first 2 clues to a physical place on the map. I don't believe you can get past the second clue from Google Maps or any other maps. I think you have to have boots on the. I think that's why it's so darn hard. I think you have to have boots on the ground to find the home of Brown. I don't think it's a name of anything. I think you have to. You'll get there, and then that's how you'll have the confidence to go further. So I mean, my search is for that home of Brown. I put boots on the ground. That's what I'm looking for.
Nice, Michael.
Okay, well, 2 points. One, I thought it was another very carefully worded answer. Several dozen hunters have already claimed to possess the treasure, but none could tell me the correct hiding place or send me photos. Then he talks about the video makers and bloggers who have presented entertaining evidence to the contrary. I think his comment is limited to those who have blogged or have made videos saying where they think the treasure is. And that doesn't apply to AGK or any other channel in which they do not make such claims.
Right.
Except that maybe, you went out and you were saying that it was at the Rio de los Pinos.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe you get grazed by that bullet.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you, Michael. Thank you.
The second one where he says tantamount poem was written to assist all searchers, I think is important. And clues, studying the clues is tantamount to using a roadmap. I released a video earlier today, recorded actually a few weeks ago. It's very nice to see that the point that I was trying to make in that video is reflected here. I really think that he is supportive in terms of the navigation aspects of the poem. He's making that as simple and as clear as possible, and that the barriers are not navigational barriers, but they're interpretive barriers. The problem is how to interpret the landmarks, but not how to sequence them or how to travel. I think these things are relatively straightforward, and it seems to be consistent with his answer here.
Very nice. So I don't know whether I mentioned this before, but for those of you that haven't visited Michael's YouTube channel to see his videos, he has a very different style, and it's very much in line with, if you know Michael, his personality, and they too are very insightful. I strongly recommend you visit his YouTube channel, as I do the others' channels and Cynthia's blog. So the only thing that that struck me in this was the comment about the several dozen hunters have already claimed to possess the treasure. My only reaction to that was, I think that's an underestimate. I think there have been hundreds, if not thousands of people that have claimed to own the treasure. And I agree with you on the point that there have been both bloggers and YouTube videos in which they have claimed to have found it, or at least claimed to have found the location where the treasure would have been had not somebody beat them to it. So it makes for damn interesting viewing. Question 5. You have such a love for and fond memories of flying. Of all the flying you have done after the military, which was your favorite flight over the Rockies as a pilot, and why? And which was your least favorite? Michael, let's go back to you.
Okay, just the mention of 200 feet, I think he's just pushing our buttons.
Yeah.
The interesting word there is teeth. I think that's the only real word that we can sort of like grab onto and say, is there something reference of teeth that's relevant to the solution? Some people think so. I don't see it. I'm not worried about it. But I like the fact that he came and had a good stab at the 200-foot button. Just for...
Yeah. Did press it. Yeah.
Yeah. Press it a couple of times.
Yeah. So, Matt, Mr. Paraglider pilot, Mr. Drone pilot, tell us how you feel about flying 200 feet over the Rockies.
Well, I'd say that's pretty dangerous, and I would suggest that when he was flying 200 feet above the ground was not either time when he lost his engine, because I don't think he'd make it very, very far if you lost your engine at 200 feet. So, yeah, I agree with Michael. I think he's just kind of pushing our buttons with the 200 feet. I'm sure at times he would, on top of a mesa or whatever, drop down to 200 feet. But you're humming along pretty good when you're rolling at 200 feet of
AGL.
Yeah, you're moving around pretty good, and it's interesting that the idea of just heading out into the Rocky Mountains, not knowing where you're going or caring where you're going, it seems to me like his family would be a little concerned about that, especially if you think he went out there at 80 years old and flew an airplane at 200 feet in the Rocky Mountains, and when he has a hard time hearing and so forth. I don't know about that. I think he's kind of jerking our chain here.
Yeah.
I too find the word teeth interesting. What are the teeth of the Rocky Mountains? I know what the heart of the Rocky Mountains is, the tail of the Rocky Mountains, the head of the Rocky Mountains, but what in the world are the teeth of the Rocky Mountains? That kind of sounds to me like the edges of a canyon. If you look down on a canyon, who knows? Maybe he's talking about flying down through the canyons, and that's how that's what teeth of the Rockies mean. Yeah,
so he was 72 or 73 when he last flew, because that's when he gave up his pilot's license. So that isn't too bad. I know pilots. I mean, I'm 70. I feel I could fly if I were to renew my license. I'm not sure that I would want to fly at 200 feet for the reasons that you cited. Jonathan, what did you think about this response?
So my spidey sense went off with this one as well. So again, I think there's a style to how he hides hints in plain sight, and I think he helps us as well. So when he says a standout question, Jenny, I think that's him saying this is an important answer. And then normally what I think he does is he puts something very honest and reasonable that you think, oh, that's what he's getting at here. So 200 feet, it must be about all the drama around the 200-foot burst, and it must be about this, that, and the other. And I think, yes, something in the teeth of the Rockies is something we've got to think about, and it's hidden, even in plain sight. So, yep, I'm still thinking on that one.
Well, we'll have another show and come back and ask you again, all right?
Yep.
Cynthia, what do you think?
I agree with Jonathan. The thing that stuck out to me the most about this is he started his answer with a standout question, Jenny. So to me, that means he gave us a standout answer. And because I use confirmation bias whenever possible, I did it again here. And here he is saying one of his most favorite activities he has done as an adult after the military was fly his private plane alone. And to me, at 200 feet just means, and there again, I think Sasha brought this up last night, that's like a metaphor for flying under the radar. He went undetected. And to me, the teeth of the Rockies means the peaks of the Rockies, the incisors or whatever, the jagged peaks. And I think he's telling everybody, get out of the foothills. You have to get into the mountains. That's where who's to say he didn't even find this place, his special place, from the air the first time, and then eventually drive there and hike in or whatever. But I think this is him telling everybody, get out of the foothills and get up into the mountains. That's where he hit it.
So I wanted to address, and I think I agree with Michael, that the 200-foot component is a what did you call it, Michael? Jab? You referred to the 200 feet or so, or was that Matt?
Pulling our chain.
Yeah, pulling our chain. And the reason is the FAA, there are FAA regulations about flying, and FAA regulations say you can't fly a general aviation aircraft below 500 feet except to take off on landing. That after that, below that, you have to have permission. Secondly, there is no way to fly 200 feet over the Rockies because the Rockies are all mountains of different altitude, so you'd be flying like that, and that's a very dangerous condition for anyone, including an experienced pilot. The other thing about it was that at 200 feet, and if you're flying at what his aircraft, the Piper Malibu, had a top speed of 350 to 430 miles an hour, depending on the engine, and I think his was a turboprop. So you're flying. If you've ever flown at 200 feet, not the last time I did this literally was in Vietnam. At that speed, you're not going to see anything but a big blur, basically.
Exactly.
And you're certainly not going to come up upon if you do have an emergency where the mountain that you're headed towards is actually 200 feet higher than you thought it was going to be. It would be very difficult, and you would find yourself. And the last point that Matt made, 200 feet, if you have an engine failure at 200 feet, you're very likely going to auger in at that point. You need altitude. Altitude is what gets you. Altitude is safety. There's a flight, principle. The altitude.
Glide slope.
Right. Altitude is safety. So I think I agree with Michael when he says that the 200-foot comment is actually a yank of our chain. So, Shelley, do we have any questions? I saw comments. But I don't know that I saw any questions. Do we have any questions from the room?
We don't have any questions.
Okay, a lot of comments. I did see the comments, and I did get a comment on the 800 number, but I haven't seen any questions. So let's go on to number 6, the last one. We come to the last question of 6 question 42. I must give you the opportunity to offer any final words for them. What would you like most to say about the chase or to searchers? And I read this question, and it wasn't until the answer that I realized that there was something deeper in this comment about the last question of 6 questions, because at that point what she was informing us was that this was the last set of 6 questions that she would present to Forrest and he would answer, and I didn't realize until I actually read the answer. So Cynthia, I know we talked a little bit about this. What do you think about this?
I just think this is him signing off. I think he's telling us he's pretty much done communicating maybe with the media. He doesn't actually say the media, but for sure the emails. I think he is no longer having fun, which actually he said in a print article, I think last summer.
Yeah.
I think he is over the drama and over the negativity and some of the acrimonious and caustic things that took place between different searchers or YouTube channel hosts or whatever. And I just think he's going to spend his time now with his family and watching Willie play in the snow.
Yeah. Jonah, what do you think?
I mean, this is a heartfelt account from Forrest, and I believe that. But when I first got into the chase, was reading T2TC the first few times, I tended to avoid things like My War for Me because they felt very heartfelt, and I thought, well, he won't hide hints in there. They're genuine stories, and I struggled with how Forrest was he okay with bending a little bit the 20% in the heartfelt stories. And I think since reading it and spending a lot of time with it, I think he's all right with that. Actually, I think he's all right having heartfelt but still giving hints. So yeah, I think genuinely he wants to take a step back from it. He is getting to that age, but at the same time, I do take a hint from this. So I mean, my spider sense again goes around Grey Pet, the bottle of Grey Pet, but that picture, the tree in the background, means a lot to the last steps of my solve, and the shape of it, and yeah. So I think he thinks it could be coming to an end soon, and I'm not sure he would have that picture in that way if it wasn't saying something based on some of the pictures he's had in his scrapbooks, which I think there are hints in as well. Yeah.
Matt?
I'm just trying to figure out where I can get a bottle of Grape Ed.
Texas, brother.
They still make this stuff?
I think, if they're still knee-high, because if I remember correctly, knee-high took over the Grape Ed brand and it became knee-high Grape Ed. But I think the closest you're going to get to it now, if you can actually find it, is Fanta Grape. But my time in Texas, the big thing while I was in Texas, I spent, when I returned from Vietnam, I was assigned to Fort Hood, Texas, which is right in that central Texas area, not far from Temple, Lampasas River. And what the big thing there was Big Orange. Everybody wanted, let's go get us Big Orange. I never heard the Grape Ed before that. So what do you think?
He makes a lot of references to sodas. He talks about Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola, now Grape Ed. I'm sure there's others that he's talked about. The only thing I can think with the Grape Ed is, it's apparently it was originally one of the first clear glass bottles to show off the purple color, and he did point out in that. Remember the shards? The shards video that he commented and said it was a very important video, and there's a portion of that where there's a whiskey bottle, and it's very much a purple whiskey bottle top in the middle of all those shards, and he goes on and talks about this whiskey bottle, and I think he references tungsten, right, for giving it that color. Who knows? Maybe the Grape Ed is some sort of disguised hint. Talking about tungsten. Maybe that's our heavy loads, huh?
What's interesting to me is I went through all the responses and I pulled the words that jumped out at me, and Grape Ed was one of those words on my jump out list. Michael, what do you think about this last response?
Grape Ed is an anagram for Great Pet.
Great Pet. You think it's a reference to Willie?
No, that's Great Pet. No. I'm just yanking the chains of anagrammers.
Oh, okay.
Shout out to Mike Cowling there. Okay. What do I think of this? Sasha made a very interesting comment the other day on Fenn Treasure Hunter's Illinois Ghost channel. She thinks that the photo was staged, and it hadn't occurred to me until she said so, and now I totally believe that that's the case. If you look at the photo, you have footsteps in the snow going down that little path towards the tree with the V. Okay. And those footsteps seem to be least fresh. And the footsteps around Willie seem to be the freshest. The Willie is off on the right-hand side of the photo, so compositionally, it's drawing attention to that path and to that tree as well. So that it was a nicely framed shot. That tree looks like a fork in the road, and the question that I ask is he drawing attention to a fork in the road? In the thrill of the chase, there's a passage somewhere. I got the book and I can't remember, didn't find it. Couldn't find the page fast enough. The says that he and Peggy have taken the same branch. Whenever they reached a fork in the road, that they would take the same branching. a very, very bad paraphrase here. I think that the photo is an indication that he and Peggy are taking the same branch. It's to me, as a composition, it represents a dedication to family, a dedication to Peggy, and of course there's Willie as well. Mm-hmm. But this is an artistic interpretation. I'm not saying that I can read the mind of Forrest Fenn in any way with this. But if for people who like to play with these things, then maybe they might want to consider whether there's a fork in the road or fork in the trail somewhere along the correct solve. Mm-hmm. And the question then might arise as to which direction should be taken.
All right, we're getting close to the end of this evening. Thank you all for your commentary up until this point. I'm gonna follow up with two. What I don't usually do, they're going to be yes/no questions. All I need from you is a yes or no, but I'm going to ask you each of these questions. So the first yes/no question, we'll go around with the room, starting with you, Cynthia. Do you believe that Forrest believes there's someone very close to the treasure? Cynthia?
Yes.
Jono?
Yes.
Matt?
Sure.
You don't sound convinced. And Michael?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to be the only no in that. And secondly, and again, I'm going to start with you. This is the second yes/no answer. Well, is it your gut feeling, Cynthia, that the treasure will be found this search season?
Yes.
Jono?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
Michael?
Absolutely.
And I'm going to go again with no. Okay, so all of you, thank you very much for a very entertaining and informative evening. I appreciate you all being here and making sure that we had this great discussion, even though it's an hour long. If we had to, we could probably go 3 hours on this topic, but we won't. We did make over 208 peak concurrent viewers tonight, so that's a new record for us, I think. It is a big number, and we wanted to thank all our subscribers because we went over 4,100 this last week, so we want to thank our subscribers for joining us in this adventure. You can see Shelley and I tomorrow on the Softer Side at 1 p.m. The Softer Side is going to be, we're going to dual stream to both Gypsy's Kiss or AGK Media and Shelley's The Softer Side channel. So you will get a notification if you want to join us, and Shelley will tell you about that topic. And then on Friday night, we'll do the Forrest Fenn Friday Fandango, where I have some pictures to share with you about that topic that I was describing earlier, the differences between Google Earth. I'm going to show you 3 images, Google Earth image, drone image, and boots on the ground image. And you're going to see the differences and how hard the problem gets once you're boots on the ground. All right. So we'll see you then. And I have one other announcement to make. Next Tuesday. Oh, did they agree? I'm sorry. I don't have an announcement to make. But because I didn't get it. We talked about it with our first other program that we're going to be hosting on AGK Media, but I realized we didn't come to a conclusion in our teleconference yesterday. The last thing that I would like to hear from you in the chat room, although not on the chat room, we're thinking about restarting our Wednesday night panel sessions, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, with topics like this on the Fenn treasure. And what I'd like when you get to the comments section after this show has been published on YouTube is put a comment in there and tell us whether you think that's a good idea, a bad idea, and if you think it's a good idea, some of the topics that you would like us to cover as a panel. So I have a lot of fun with these. I think our panelists do as well, and we love having them. And I don't know about you, but they've all put effort into improving their lighting and their audio, and it just sounded and looked great tonight. So I was really pleased with that. So let's go around the room. Cynthia, say your good nights to the chat room, and then tell us where we can find you on the internet, please.
You can find me at chasingfennstreasure.com, or you can email me at cynthiaameacham at gmail.com.
Thank you. Jono?
I'm Jono Jones, known as Brit Chaser on YouTube. I've been intending to do videos for a long time. They will get up there soon. And I'm on Hint of Riches as well.
Yeah, it does get difficult just to find the time to do the videos. So, Matt?
I'm Matt Brewer, and I had a lot of fun tonight with this one. It was certainly a lot of, a lot of good discussion around there.
Well,
And I love that blue short. You got to go with that more often.
oh, you think? Huh?
Yeah.
I had
It's
a
good on you.
business meeting today, so I actually had a suit on earlier. I thought
Wow.
about wearing the suit tonight, but that's at least it
We-
isn't, as my daughter says, at least it isn't cargo pants, Dad.
Yeah. But were you wearing hush puppies?
No, I was not wearing hush puppy. I
Yeah.
actually have some very nice Bostonians, so
Oh, okay.
I did.
And you can find me at Brewer Aerial, or about 200 foot above the Rocky Mountains.
In a drone. Or,
In a drone
actually, I
or
guess
on
with
a
that paraglider.
paraglider.
Yeah, you got to take a look at those paraglider videos that Matt has put up. It looks like a lot of fun. I think I'm past the age where I could do it, but it looks like a hell of a lot of fun. Michael?
Well, you can check out my channel, the Forrest Fenn Learning Curve, and if you want to contact me, you can find my email address there.
Thank you. Thank you all members of the panel for tonight. As I said, I'm sure our audience found it both informative and entertaining, and we'll look for you all on future panel sessions. Let me finish tonight by having did I have my partner say goodnight?
No.
No? Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure that got done. Shelley?
Thanks for joining us and for all your great questions and comments in the chat room. And we're getting a really good response on coming back for more panels in the future. So
Okay.
hope to see you then. And of course, tomorrow for the softer side, Friday for Fandango.
Yeah, we'll have fun on both. So again, this is Toby Eunice for AGK Media. We look forward to seeing you on other programming this week. We hope you enjoyed this, and make sure that if you're going to make a comment before you leave the room, thank the panel for joining us tonight and being so informative and entertaining. And panel, again, thank you very much. It was a great evening. Let's go with an outro.